All right. Any other agenda items people want to add?
No, but I'm curious
Yeah.
to see the last one. I definitely want to hear about it.
Yeah. All right. Reviewing action items. So scrolling down here, did we have any action items? There was just
Yeah,
yeah, that which you're gonna do later this meeting.
yeah.
So we're good there. Yeah, V8 changes progress update. So I believe I made issues for all of the big V8 stuff. I think the only thing that I actually really want to just call out regarding them right now is the identifier stuff.
Mhm.
Because I'm just worried about causing a lot of pain and friction for people, potentially upgrading and being stuck or having some kind of pipeline that we haven't fully anticipated. Like the big use case right now is like um, when you have nested cross steps inside in a cross step and you have variables in there, we don't necessarily want to mourn and complain about those. So yeah, there's just some gotchas in there that are having making me feel a little hesitant right now to like keep pushing too hard with the identifier stuff. Um, so yeah, that's the kind of the only one that I'm like, I'm not sure if we'll end up wanting like getting this landing in version 8 or not. At least like priority wise, it's kind of sinking down to me because it seems like there's just a lot of like gotchas there. Um, and yeah, and I don't want to like make people upgrade and then have stuff like the cross step suddenly not work. Um, I think there's also some weird stuff with variable interpolation that would it would be helpful if it was improved potentially with this stuff. But yeah, so that's kind of and I left a huge comment on that issue. So yeah, that's the only one that I'm kind of like middling about right now. I think everything else is fine, or I don't foresee any major hurdles at this time. Um, but yeah, that's kind of it.
Mm.
All right. If no one has any questions about any of the V8 stuff or wants to comment further on it, we can go on to the next action item.
I had
Stro,
a question
Kellen.
about V8, but it's more regarding do you see any timelines of it? Because I saw that a lot of
Mm,
stuff was open. So are you planning timelines, time-wise something, or whenever we get to it, then we will release? Just as a
yeah.
rough estimate, not something that is concrete in any way, but
Yeah, I haven't actually tried to sit down and estimate it. I could put a deadline in like the milestone just to so we have a date to kind of push towards. But yeah, I'm not gonna like push us to be like we have to hit that deadline
mm,
or anything like that. But yeah, I can put a deadline in just so we have something to work towards. Off the top of my head right now, I'm thinking maybe probably 2 or 3 months or something is what I would guess.
mm.
Um, But yeah, I'll look over, see what I've shoved in the milestones so
Let's
far,
say
try to
2 years
give a reasonable
after
estimate. After what?
after New Year.
After New Year? Yeah.
Not the Christmas parties with fixing some stuff.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Yeah,
Definitely
if
not.
there's a vote on that, yeah, you have a plus on from me.
Cool. All right. Cool. I'll do that. All right. If there's nothing else there, Callan Histro, feel
Yeah.
free to. I assume you guys will want to share your
Let's see
screen or
if
something.
Karen is gonna be
Yeah,
able to share.
I'll still
Yeah.
the screen sharing. Just let me figure out how it happens on Zoom because I'm not
Yep.
used to it. Okay, maybe entire screen just to make sure. And yeah, we actually prepared the presentation, so I'll now
Yeah, because we're corporate.
answer.
Wow.
The
Wow.
slide deck. Oh boy.
Of course. It's gonna be easier to talk, so
I have to
and
quit Zoom, so I will rejoin shortly.
yeah. Yeah, we have to give
Oh.
it permissions, right?
Yeah, permissions. I hate that. All
Yeah.
right.
Max
And on
permission
the
structure is one of the most annoying things on the planet.
yeah.
Like
But
unsigned
once
binaries and like re-give permission to an app on whatever. Bleh.
Yeah,
yeah,
I thought Windows had did it bad when they did it in Vista with UAC, but I I think this is worse.
I know everybody's complaining about Vista, but I have to say I used that thing for probably 3 years.
It,
No issues at
it
all.
it was great after a couple of patches. It was
Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
you had to wait for the patches. It's
Yeah,
like
you know, with the patches.
it's like Cyberpunk, right? Like same idea. Like
Yeah.
that game ended up being fantastic. You just had to wait like a year,
Yep.
and then it was great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Kellen, you have
I
some
had to
sort of a
switch the
message.
screen.
Yeah.
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 There we go.
There you
Okay,
go.
but we see the screen.
Yeah, I
We
had
do.
to
Yep.
switch the slide.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How
I
can
like that. Tips and tricks.
I do love that this is actually PowerPoint too, right? Not Google Slides or like
Where is my
Yeah.
mouse? Now my mouse disappeared.
But
Swap
I keep
this.
seeing
Okay.
your mouse,
but
and
we
now
see
You
the
can
it's
see
mouse.
it.
Yeah, you
we
see
see the
it, but I
mouse.
don't see it. Ah, it maybe detects it as a separate screen. What do you see? Do you see the notes or do you see?
Managing, we see the
No,
actual.
the
Ah,
actual
Yeah, we
okay.
see the
perspective.
slide.
Yeah,
Yeah.
then we're fine. Never
Yeah,
Yep.
we're
because
Looks
totally
good.
good.
because I don't see it. So cool.
Oh, fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh
have
boy.
notes for this one. I'm pretty sure you know it by heart.
yeah. I'm going to speak. Yeah, from heart. So yeah, I'll give the word to Christo since we decided that he will open up because
Yeah.
he's more familiar with the history of the topic, so he can provide better context. So Christo, the floor is
Yeah,
yours.
thanks. As the dinosaur in the team regarding Concourse. Yeah, maybe Karen, you can directly go to the next slide. And yeah, thanks everybody for the, let's say, opportunity, but overall, I think that more importantly from our perspective at the moment is to share some knowledge in that area because yeah, we wanted to express who are we to talk about this and yeah, what we have as experience with Concourse. Actually, we have been working in Concourse for, I think, from my perspective, for me, it's since 2019, the end of 2019. But Concourse is part of SAP since the almost the very start of our BTP platform in Cloud Foundry specifically. And yeah, that's about 9 years now, approaching 10 soon. And yeah, as Karin dug around, we found out that it's since version 3 something of Concourse. So many fixes came by and we adopted and opened issues, etc., etc. But in our team specifically, we have been working with Concourse for around 7 years. For me, it's 6 years or something like that. But yeah, that's just numbers. Never mind. The important part here is that we actually worked with Concourse for some time now and going over many different approaches, specifically each landscape of our BTP thing has a Concourse instance, but nevertheless, we today are not going to focus on um, the central Concourse instance, as we say it from our perspective. But that's more or less a huge Concourse instance which we manage. In the yeah, in the past we've had many different issues, and actually now it's pretty stable. But I want to give the word to Kalin, who is actually going to explain in much more detail how we handle that instance, what we configure, and all the details here. So, Kalin, go ahead.
Yeah, so as Christo mentioned, he's the grandpa in the team, so that was a lot of legacy information, 9 years, 10 years, version 1, version 0. So that doesn't bring us to why you should care now. So I dug up a little information for specifically the topic that we've gathered today. And our central Concourse instance, the way we call it, is, as Christo already stated, a multi-tenant big instance that provides a lot of stuff for Cloud Foundry and BTP. But in our case, we actually have 62 teams in Concourse, which are individual stakeholders, or in that case, tenants, as we mentioned. We have over 3,600 pipelines with over 25,000 jobs in them, which results in around, let's say, close to 1 million builds a month. And we did actually a little metrics digging, and we saw that that's around 150,000 compute hours a month as well, which is a lot for a concourse, and we'll see why. So our infrastructure for this instance, as minimalistic as possible, not going into so much detail, we actually in Concourse have 3 BOSH deployments. A core deployment which consists of web and workers without the database. So we use YAS database, and we'll come to that a bit later. So we have virtual machines for the web and workers, and we'll see the numbers and configurations for them in a bit. Also, we have an external worker. You might know that Concourse provides for Bosch an external worker that could manage the instance, because if you deploy Concourse from within itself, you usually hit the issue of self-managing, which is it cannot drain the worker that it's being redeployed on, which was a problem for us for a lot of time. And we solved it by registering an external worker, which is more or less another BOSH deployment that handles with tagged worker, which handles the deploy of Concourse in itself. And we also have an auto-scale deployment, which is specifically designed for, we have a pipeline that introduces a lot of load. So a lot of deploy jobs happen during that time, and a lot of them happen in parallel. So what we decided to do is utilizing the external worker functionality, because you have an endpoint in the TSA where you can register your workers. Using the same mechanism, we register workers for specifically when this pipeline starts, and then when it ends, we deregister the workers, so we destroy the instances for cost. So at some point, we decided we need to auto-scale for specific pipelines, and that's how we handled it, which was also quite interesting and challenging until we configured it. And finally, yeah, as I mentioned, we have a RDS database instance on AWS for managing the storage. We will see the configurations, as I mentioned, in the bit. So starting with the workers, as you know, that's more or less the most important thing, because our containers get executed on them. So I gathered a table, which is also quite interactive. So we have 4 worker pools, and specifically for each of them, the general pool, we call it general because those are the workers that are not tagged and are not teamed in any way, meaning they handle all the workload for the stakeholders in our case. At a certain point, we went into researching of teaming up specific workers for different teams, but for cost optimization reasons and because most of those instances would need to be also available a lot of the time, we decided to opt against that and have dedicated non-team, non-tagged workers to handle the everyday workload. And for them, we have 8 cores of CPU, 16 gigabytes of memory. We provide them, because of the large scale of the instance, we provide them with 600 gigabytes of ephemeral storage, because 62 stakeholders with different images, different landscapes, and revisions and configurations is quite a lot of space. So usually we use it pretty well. In your case, maybe if you have a centralized image for the stakeholders, it might be less, but in anyways, we're talking about our use case. And we have 19 of those workers in our instance. Teamed workers, so we do have teamed workers in the instance because we have a specific team that actually is quite more loaded than the other teams, and we decided to designate specific workers for it, just to be sure that it always has workers on which to schedule the workload. As CPU and RAM, all our worker pools have the same configurations. Here, the difference is that the count is quite lower, so we have 6 of those workers. And as I mentioned, we have a couple, 2 or 3 that are auto-scalable, but they also come to the teamed workers with 200 gigabytes of ephemeral storage. We have 1 external worker, I already mentioned it. The configurations are the same as for the teamed workers. And yeah, the auto-scaled are 2 as well. They are also teamed within this specific team for our case. So yeah, that's pretty much it about the workers. By the way, if someone has any questions, feel free to disrupt it. It's not it's more of a plan that we want to follow, not a presentation. In a sense, we have to show something specifically. So if anything comes up, feel free to jump in and ask. Moving on, the web virtual machines. So quite a bit easier here. So our virtual machines require a lot less CPU. We found out through the metrics. So we provide them with 4 cores of CPU, 16 gigabytes of RAM. The disk here is not relevant, so they don't use a lot of space. So we provide them with 20 gigabytes for storage and an operational disk of 5 gigabytes. And we have 6 webs for this instance because 62 stakeholders means a lot of API connections. And in that sense, we require more webs. And specifically to that, we have a web to worker ratio of around 1 to 4 at the moment, which is better than what is suggested in the Concourse official documentation, which is 1 to 6. But due to the API connections, we try to keep a lower ratio because this ratio more or less depends on how many API connections you have. So if you have a lot of users actively using, I might suggest lowering your ratio as well. So having more webs to handle the connections. And yeah, the database here is the most crucial for us because, as you know, databases usually is a single point of failure stuff. So for us, that's the most crucial, and we'll see why in a bit. So our database instance is quite huge. It has 8 CPUs again with 32 gigabytes of memory. And here specifically, we have a disk of 410 gigabytes because on AWS, if you go above 400, they give you 12,000 IOPS. And if you're below, it's a lot less. So yeah, here the disk storage is specifically for that reason, 410. The idea is to be above 400.
Maybe just one remark here for AWS. Um, Something which AWS provides because we are deployed on all hyperscalers, so GCP, AWS, Azure, etc. AWS definitely provides one thing which is much better than the others, and those are the out-of-the-box features for maintaining the instance. So upgrades of the minor version can be automated, and they execute some PG dumps underneath, so scaling, etc. Upgrading the instance size, for example, even. So most of the things are available out of the box, and the RDS service provides it. In the case of GCP, that's not always the thing. So if you have to upgrade the engine, for example, you need to create a new instance. So you have to make backup, restore, etc. on your own. So yeah, sorry for the jump
Yeah,
in.
no problem. That's actually quite interesting because that's a bit two-sided and two factors. So they do stuff under the hood, which sometimes blocks Concourse because we have seen there was an issue a while back in the community about an AWS instance stuck at 100% 100% CPU, and I think that's also related to what they do under the hood in some way. But we never actually figured out what exactly happened there.
Yeah, but we saw it, I think, as well.
Yeah, so we hit it. We hit it. We were not able to find how to reproduce it, but there was a latent query that actually,
Mm.
for some reason, I think when they do the PG dump, so when they start the backup procedure, it executes a query that got latent for some reason. I think
Mm.
there's a missing index or something that we need to adjust. But yeah, in any way, that's how what was the behavior back then. But yeah, moving on from the AWS specific topic. So as Christo mentioned, yeah, we have a lot of other IaaS providers that we use, but specifically on AWS, we use HA database. So we have a standby replica at all times, and we will see a bit some stuff we had to do in order to get that to as minimal downtime as possible. But in any way, at the moment, if the primary should fail, it takes around 2 to 3 minutes to reconnect the webs to the new instance. So so the jobs see around 2 to 3 minutes of downtime in the build logs if you have something ongoing during the database failover switch. So some configurations here as additional details. At the moment, the version we use with PostgreSQL is 16.9, which is something that Concourse supports, because I think you built with the latest Bosch database as well. We also run on Concourse with Postgres 16.9. So the max connections here are 550. I think we started off with default of around 250, if I remember, a lot low. But due to the set API connections and scaling of webs, we at the moment are handling around. So we have it configured for 550. We have around 500 active connections during different times. And our database is automatically provisioned with Terraform script. So yeah, that was something as a side note maybe we wanted to add. So around Concourse specific configurations that we use on this instance, so the version is 7.13.1, soon 7.14.1. Actually, that soon reached. So today we updated the instance to 7.14.1. So fingers crossed, we'll see.
So
Yeah.
far, no issues.
Yeah, the authentication we use the local user store that is built in Concourse, and as you already suspected, we use the Cloud Foundry connectors. So yeah, nothing new here for you as details. Other details around Concourse configuration. So some performance optimizations we do, raw streaming compression. So when Concourse images are streamed, there are three types of streaming options. We use the raw one, which means that artifacts are not compressed when streamed. So we stream the artifact in its whole, because we have larger images with a single or a couple of layers, but not so many. And when Concourse started compressing them with JZip or even with ZSTD, we saw that it took so the CPU of the web, no, not the web, the worker that actually needed to stream the volume hit 100%, because there was no parallel cores being used. It used only one of the cores, and the fastest solution was to switch the encryption to the compression to raw. By the way, we saw that JZip actually has something called PIX, which is parallel JZip or something of similar, which is in Go, but at that time we didn't have much time to figure out and contribute such thing in the community. But maybe it's something worth checking out in the future for others that might also have larger single digest volumes.
Yeah, I think that in the community somebody discussed it in the past regarding those larger images, so I guess it's not only us.
Yeah.
Remark.
Exactly. Another thing which is more or less on the same side, so we cache the volumes just for faster runtime executions. We enabled the caching long ago. I don't think even that I remember a time that it was disabled. So we always cache our volumes on the instances, because we want to speed up the deliveries, and if something is already fetched, we want to have it present on the workers. This requires a bit more disk space, as I mentioned in the start, but it's something that is not so costly, and we found it's worth to keep and maintain the resources. And yeah, another thing, when you have so many tenants and they have a lot of failed builds, the Concourse in its source code configures the default garbage collection for failed builds around 5 days. The main idea was to have it over the weekend and be able to hijack and use the failed container on the next week. But for us, if we have a lot of people with hanging containers during the weekend, that prove somewhat of a bottleneck. So we lowered specifically for the failed builds, the garbage collection to around 5 minutes, because yeah, if somebody fails, we can always retrigger or ask them to retrigger and hijack then and debug whatever happened. So it's something we also found worth mentioning here when you have a lot of tenants. And yeah, the pipeline stability features. So we ensure that we have timeout set for each task. We will talk about how we achieve that a bit later. But the main idea is, as I mentioned, our concourse is self-managed, and when we want to update or manage it, if there are jobs that are hanging forever, it's something that's bad for us. We know that there's out-of-the-box global configuration for timeout, and I think we even set it, or I don't remember if we set it or if we discussed to set it, but we didn't want to break any of the stakeholders' jobs in the middle. There might
We still don't set that one. We discussed it, but we haven't set it. We actually rely on the draining timeout at the moment.
yeah. Exactly. But yeah, our general idea is to monitor the stakeholders' behavior, and if they have a lot of or higher set timeouts or not no timeouts at all, we create a report and we just ask them to implement timeouts and split their long-running jobs into smaller ones, just to ensure that eventually the container will succeed and or fail, and we can drain and recreate the worker machine. So that's something that is also uh, provide some TCO here, but it's something worth to implement from our side. And retrying of tasks. So a lot of the times we, for some reason, a Git issue or a S3 issue might prove to break a build that is running for a couple of days. So for such specific tasks that might hiccup often, uh, we like to use the retry feature of adding attempts to set steps in Concourse, and is something that we usually advise our users. And yeah, some honorable mentions here. We use the OPA for, in our specific case, we don't want privileged containers to escalate and people gaining root access to the virtual machines. That's something that's discussed a lot with containerd. We know that you're planning to adjust the seccomp filters and other configurations to anyway have it securely, even with privileged container. But it's something that we at the moment rely heavily on for security reasons. And the other thing here with the OPA, we disable the feature that reruns builds. So actually you can disable pretty much anything you like that happens through the API in Concourse, but we disable the rerun specifically because we have a Git resource that actually usually is inputted between different jobs, and we don't want to be able to retrigger, for example, a Terraform built with old Terraform source code at a specific time. So that's why we decided to disable this feature for the time being. We use the overlay driver. This is a general recommendation that I see you giving to almost everyone that I've seen open issues about the driver. From our side, we have used the BTRFS, and we know that overlay is far superior at the moment in so many ways. So we are using it. And the web restart workaround, this is something actually related to the database that I mentioned. So on certain IaaS providers, we noticed that when Concourse loses the connection to the database, the web loses the connection and it fails. It has around 15 minutes delay until we got the endpoint back up, but the primary was already running and active. So there were a lot of connections that were not closed from Concourse, and I think Concourse got misinterpreted between the which instance to use. So what specifically the web restart does is when you see error logs specifically that the database connections have been dropped or are failing for some reason, what it does is it schedules a monit restart call to restart the web processes, which we know that mitigated the issue that I mentioned. So when you restart the web, it actually connects to the new database. It might be something cached in the code. We haven't had time to dig deeper into that, but it's something that we implemented during failovers, as we noticed that it sped up the recovery of downtime.
Yeah, just quickly one remark here, but we don't only check for the error messages. It's true, but I think I'm not sure at the moment if we use that version because we tweaked around the web restart workaround, whatever we call it, feature. We were looking at the error messages from one perspective, but from another perspective, we checked some of the endpoints because we wanted to be sure that
Yeah,
we
that's the
don't
old.
yeah,
That's the old.
that's the old one, and it wasn't working that well, so we worked with the error messages. But one more thing is that just to add on top of what Kalin already explained very well, we restart the web process, not the whole instance, only the process itself, as a Bosch VM, of course. So the restart of the process is enough to retrigger the connections to the database.
Exactly. Uh, as in Kubernetes, you might need to kill the pod. I don't know if
Yeah.
you can restart the process in the pod itself. Maybe you could. I haven't played around with it, but yeah. In any case, it's something that you need to check out when if you configure YAS database, maybe trigger a failover to see what's the downtime and whether a restart would be required on your end. It's something that could run as a sidecar container or whatever. It doesn't matter. The idea is pretty simple behind it. So for monitoring and observability, by the way, don't look at the picture. I will zoom it up a bit in a bit. I just wanted to talk about it first. So first, where do we look at? Okay, we look at pipelines. As I mentioned, we want to ensure that timeouts are individually set. We have a script that actually takes care of that. We recurse into different tasks and we check out whether a timeout property is set. If not, we create a report, as I mentioned, which is then used to actually reach out to our individual stakeholders and ask them, okay, your job never times out. Can you please fix that? Because we rely on that. And also we generate a report for image usages. Uh, when you have so many stakeholders, sometimes it's worth generating an image resource usage because a lot of them might be using the same image with different tags or different revisions, and you want to reach out to them and ensure to use the same because that would, as mentioned, it would cache it for you. It would make it faster for them, and in any case, you would require less storage and capacity to handle it. So if you have at the end a general report and a lot of people, for example, are using BusyBox but different versions, you might ask them, okay, can you try switching your version up a bit to this, let's say, generally available version? So we have it available for everyone. It would make your stuff faster as well. So most of them actually do that when asked. The hard part is asking them and generating when you have so many. But yeah, it's something that usually we do. And here for infrastructure monitoring, that's what we monitor on the infrastructure side. As we mentioned, we had virtual machines, so we use Telegraph, which is a Bosch release for metrics emissions, as well as Riemann. And for visualization, we use Grafana. That's for workers and web, as well as for the DB. On the DB, the metrics are actually available from the IaaS providers themselves, so you just need to configure a dashboard to visualize them. So that's what we use for infrastructure monitoring. And for application monitoring, as you already know, Concourse comes with a built-in Prometheus in itself. We actually use it. We filter out some of the metrics that we don't need, but most of them we have actually visualized in some way or another. For visualization, we also use Grafana. And for logging interactions, we usually use Kibana just to monitor the logs of the web worker and different processes on the virtual machines. So yeah, an example panel, so that's a specific dashboard with different panels. We monitor the CPU, memory, ephemeral disk usage, the system disk itself, which as I mentioned, since we are using a virtual machine, we have a system and ephemeral disk separately. Some additional CPU metrics, swap usage, memory usage. From the application side, we monitor the active containers at the moment, the active volumes as well as numbers. So if we reach certain thresholds, I will talk about this in a bit, but if we reach certain thresholds, we emit different alerts. For example, if we have close to max containers reached, we can trigger an alert. And yeah, regarding that, so for alerting and thresholds, we have around 75% of the whole. We have a warning alert emitted, and above 90%, we consider it a critical alert that requires some sort of scaling or workaround intervention. So what we actually monitor here for and we provide alerts for is CPU saturation, memory saturation, disk usages. So if the disk is almost completely used, and max containers reached. So pretty much anything that could break scheduling new jobs we monitor for, and we handle it. So some lessons learned with best practices and some solutions. So on the solution side, it's usually always the same for a multi-tenant instance. You need to scale, scale, scale. That's the solution we provide for everything. Here, the hard part is that when you need to scale horizontally the workers, because most of the times you would require horizontal scaling because of a lot of new stakeholders, containers, etc. So you would need additional space to schedule more containers. So we usually horizontally scale the workers, but that requires us usually to scale the webs horizontally as well. And since we want to scale the web horizontally, we need to scale the database connections. And since the database is a single point of failure, we need to scale it vertically to handle those new connections, and usually provided with additional storage. So on the scaling part, it's a bit rough at a certain time to just upscale, because you would require to more or less upscale everything in Concourse to handle the new the new load that comes in. Yeah, I've talked about it, so that was the solution. Let's talk about the challenges. As I already mentioned, scaling, what a surprise. It's quite challenging to scale up such an instance, because you require to do a lot of stuff in order to simply scale a couple of workers. I already talked about that. So some stuff that we usually see as problems are database bottlenecks. So usually the first thing that fails on our site is the database. The other stuff is pretty stable in its core. We rarely have specific problems from the application, and usually they are something that could be quite relatively easily fixed by recreating a worker or web virtual machine. But the database usually has the toughest problems, or the stuff that needs most operational support on. Also, self-upgrading hangs a lot due to draining. I already talked about that, but when you have so much active containers in Concourse, and when you do a graceful draining, because in our case, we like to persist and have a graceful draining of the workers, that takes a lot of time when you try to patch something or update something for Concourse, and could be quite slow as an operation. And the other thing is manual operations that we thought are worth mentioning. So two of Concourse's credentials actually require manual rotation and cannot be done with a blue-green approach. That's the TSA key and the ATC key. For the ATC, I think we did quite a lot more in that sense. And what we figured out is that the problem is not specifically in Concourse, but more or less what Postgre provides out of the box. So you cannot have shared ownership of different tables. So you cannot have both users being active at the same time, meaning you cannot provide the blue-green approach. So it's something that might be beneficial for other stakeholders as well, and might require additional looking into on the community side, but at the moment, at least from our perspective, that's the deadline we hit. So having Postgres support this feature. And for the TSA, I'm not sure at the moment why. Maybe it's because SH also doesn't support blue-green. I'm not sure why we don't have, why we cannot provide two active TSA users. I actually haven't played around with this, so we might reach a point where we try to implement something around this. But yeah, at the moment, Concourse works with one TSA user as well. So those credentials, when we need to rotate them, we actually do it manually. Oh, I think the TSA was another. So the TSA cannot be drained. So you cannot drain because when you switch the key, your workers could
Yeah,
not be drained, and you need to skip
the
draining.
communication breaks.
Yeah, and that's why. So you have to break the draining logic of Concourse. Yeah, that was the reason. Okay, so I
Yeah,
have
but
played around it, but a while back.
yeah, but that's the whole thing, that it supports only one of the keys. If you have more than one, I guess maybe you'll be able to use both of them for communication.
Yep, yeah, maybe. And yeah, the database operations, as I mentioned, since it's a single point of failure, for example, just switching a major or minor version of the engine, for example, for the Postgre engine, usually because we have a lot of stakeholders, and usually that requires some sort of downtime, even if it's something minimal, and Terraform does it in place, it still sometimes requires 2 to 3 minutes timeout. So, sorry, not timeout, but downtime. And that's why you usually need to do set operations by hand as well, so manually. And that's most of the stuff that is mostly problematic for our large instance. So I have a thank you slide with shaking hands, and feel free to drop any questions or comments that you saw during the presentation.
Yeah, questions. I was just writing questions down as it was going. But yeah,
Awesome.
one thing I didn't see you guys mention is pipeline scheduling. I'm curious how you guys have configured your web nodes to do pipeline scheduling. Yeah, like which like
So
strategies did you
for the
guys end up
strategy,
picking?
we use the fewest build containers, since that's the most critical thing that breaks us usually. We saw the newest features about combining strategies, but due to some side effects that we have seen in the past with that, we're not using it. And we're using the max containers because, as I mentioned, we have a lot of ongoing containers, and that's the stuff we most heavily rely on to have, and that's what provides the most stable metrics utilization from our end. So
But an important remark is as well that with this configuration, we haven't had any issues. So we looked at some point to combine some of the approaches, but we didn't see the need because, yeah, overall, the max containers configuration is more than well working for us. I mean, it's stable enough.
yeah, but so if you use the volume locality strategy, then you would have less space used by the volumes, but then you would have a lot more containers, and potentially your stakeholders could break because of max containers reached. So that's something we opted against off. And as Christo mentioned, since it's as stable as it gets, and since even though with so many stakeholders with different images, we still manage to handle it in a couple of 100 gigs of storage, it's still fine to not switch that strategy in that sense. But yeah, thanks for the
Nice.
question. It's something that I might have needed to add.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay. Very, very interesting answer too. Not what I was expecting there. So it's good to know that just using just that one strategy actually works so well for you guys. That's really
Yeah.
nice to see, actually. Other question I had was actually just you mentioned you guys shortened that the build garbage collection down to 5 minutes down from 5 days. That was cool. Was also just curious, do you guys have default build log reaping configured as
Yep.
well on
Yep.
there? Yeah.
Yeah. So from
Interesting topic.
yeah, Due to the issue at the moment, we actually noticed
Right.
that our stakeholders are actually not using the days property, and we're in the middle of just removing it because from our side it's counterintuitive a bit because
Yeah.
when you have days and builds configured, turns out it respects both. What we expected was it respects either,
Mhm.
which was the past strategy. We noticed that that was a while back the strategy. Then it changed to this one. Doesn't matter. It's a lot confusing to explain for our stakeholders. So at the moment, we use the build strategy, and we more or less have a matrix table that is for high frequent jobs that execute every let so and so minutes. You should set so many builds for so many days. So just to keep one simple property instead of both. And yeah, at the moment, the default values, I think for a default for the builds is 200. So we maintain 200 builds if you haven't configured it. And as maximum, I think we use 1,500 builds
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you have it.
the max is 1,500.
Yeah, you can override it up until 1,500. So yeah, thanks
Yeah,
for the
but
question.
the whole goal from our side was mainly to keep the database storage where it should be because we've had issues in the past before the whole fix around the garbage collection. We've had issues with database storage, so we had to implement some workarounds, and now we are thinking about removing them. So that was the reason why we started researching the topic. We want to remove the workarounds.
Yep. Cool. Okay.
By the way, one of the biggest problems with garbage collecting we see at the moment is for some reason at certain times, I actually reopened an issue recently for that. You have a single Go routine that actually handles the volume cleaning, and sometimes stuff gets piled up in overlay and dead volumes. So there are folders dead and overlay or something like that. I think Rui Wang, or I'm not sure if I mispronounced the name, a while back hit it on one of your on your stress test instances. And we actually usually reproduce it on high frequently and stressed environments of our own. So it's something that we think, or at least we suspect at the moment that when there is CPU saturation, the routine hangs up for some reason or fails in the middle somewhere. And those that are actually piled up never get cleaned up afterwards. So it's something that we're
Mm.
trying to reproduce in order to have a more meaningful approach in contributing a fix or just having a separate routine that just checks, okay, if I have leftover stuff over there, it's most likely deleted from the database anyway. So just remove it from the worker as well.
Mm.
Because it doesn't make
Gotcha.
sense to keep them there as well. So if you don't have them in the database, they will most likely be fetched again anyway.
Yep. Sure. Okay, cool. I don't have any other questions. Derek, I don't know if there was anything you want to ask.
No, that was a lot more thorough and very interesting. I was gosh. I've been inundated with so much information now. I forgot what my originally was pointedly thinking about before we got to this moment. It'll come back
That's
to me.
okay.
But regardless,
Yeah.
yeah, no.
No
This was
worries, we
helpful.
We're
have the
not
chat
aiming
in
for too
Discord.
much information. We were aiming for the correct information.
No, it's good. Yeah. Let me sorry, put it a different way. It was very good and useful information. It was just on a lot more spread of that general topic than I
Yeah,
think I was thinking about to start with. Right.
yeah,
That's all.
maintaining that
Because
instance.
I had a narrow problem in my head at that moment, and I was like, oh right, this is not a narrow problem.
Yeah,
By any
from
means.
experience, managing such an instance with so many people working on it is quite difficult from many perspectives. Not only managing the instance itself, but even upgrades, etc. In order to not break any work for the stakeholders, we need to be very careful executing manual steps, rotations, upgrades, etc. Everything is planned to 2 weeks ahead at least sometimes.
Yeah, and by the way, I forgot to mention, but if you have any questions, we can discuss in Discord as well as a follow-up in the CFF working group or whatever. Just feel free to reach out and we'll try to answer as best as possible. Or if it requires a bit more discussion, just we can add it as an agenda item and start a discussion on the next meeting as well.
No, that's great. Would you be able to add that slide deck into, or would you be willing and wanting to add it into
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
just agenda?
Totally fine.
Cool.
Maybe where do you prefer to have it? Send it in the chat. I'm not sure as a
Wherever you
file.
can reasonably make it available that people could link to it, right? So essentially people could approach this Node document, right?
Yeah.
And then be linked to it. So whatever you have access to, I think it's totally reasonable to host it. Let me put it that way.
Great. Okay.
Cool. All right. Thanks for the presentation, guys. I think the last action item on the agenda is just yeah, Derek, do you want to take it away there?
Yeah, it happened. It finally happened after just bugging lawyers on both sides back and forth for too many months. Everyone assigned the agreements. They have stored them in their respective, I don't know, signed agreement storage. So functionally, that's or it was already functionally complete in most ways, right? But now it's like actually complete, and like everyone agrees it's the state ways, right? If you were to go ask someone with authority, so it's great. There's not really any administrative pieces left to this. We've already done most of the work to transfer domains to the Linux Foundation and org ownerships and tools. The CLA is actually the last administrative thing that we can enable in the organization. Now that we've actually signed the agreements, the CLA can technically cover things. Before it could have been added, but it would have been incorrect. So now it can actually be added and be correct and serve its purpose, which is protecting people and corporations legally for signing and executing on work. So I think that's actually the only. I'll take that as add
Action item.
yep, CLA bot to Concourse. Linux
Nice.
Foundation.
Nice. That
CLA
was
bot.
a long
That will
run.
simplify contributions for folks coming in from now on.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great job. That's very nice to hear that we're gonna be able to do this year because with the tempo it was working when it's hard to do these things legally. Everything is very hard and time consuming, but nice job.
Yeah, I know this may surprise you, but it actually was the Linux Foundation that was the
Nice.
slow countersigner on this one. Not for the initial like there was a whole lot of like both sides of this thing. I want to be
Interesting.
very fair. But like for whatever reason we signed a while ago, like a month-ish, and we were just waiting about that long for the countersign to come back. So
Wow.
things happen. It's summer, or it was summer, right? So maybe that's why people are back at work signing
Maybe.
papers. Like I
Maybe that's the
guess.
reason. But whatever
Yeah.
the reason is, the good part is that those things are
The good
signed, and
person.
we're on a
Yep.
good path.
Yep. All's good. All's good. Awesome. Well,
Great.
thank you, folks.
Cool.
All
Well,
right.
yeah.
Online, and if not, see you next month.
Yep.
Yeah.
See everyone next month.
Thank you, guys.